Good evening and welcome to the November 12th, 2019 Norfolk Planning Board meeting. Please be advised that the proceedings this evening will be audio and videotaped for consumption at home. We have a full agenda this evening, and we'll begin with 6 Hill Street. We've received a request for continuance until the December meeting on December 10th, so the chair needs a motion to continue that public hearing.
So moved.
We have a second.
Second.
Any further discussion?
What time?
At 7. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. It is continued until December 10th. The next item on the agenda is the Meeting House Road site plan review for a large-scale ground-mounted solar array, which, pardon me?
You do need to wait until 7:15 because it's a public.
Sorry. Yes. Thank you for keeping me on track. So let's switch down to 5 Shire Drive and talk to these fine gentlemen in the front row.
Good evening. My name is Charles Shepard from CDW Consultants in Natick. I'm the civil engineer, and I have Sam Haddad with me tonight. He's the owner. The reason we are here tonight is we're requesting a minor modification to site plan approval. We got this approved, I believe it was in the beginning of May. Since then, the owner's been in discussion with the abutter in the back. Right now, there's a 50-foot wide access and utility easement. And what we did before was we had a 20-foot aisle that came through. He had storage around here, but we left gates open for access to the back. But maybe Sam can talk to you after about that, but that didn't work out. So what he did was he's gone back to the abutter.
Who's who, by the way?
Who's the abutter? What's the name?
Does the town have an access right on there also? Right, that did the subdivision. Right, but I thought that, isn't that also a right of, excuse me, a right of way for the town to get to the detention basin in the back there?
Yes, because there's basin here, and then up here is the community
So
septic
two
system.
folks have rights to that access.
Yeah, I don't know the legal aspects of it, but yes, there's access through there.
Okay, so anyway, please continue.
So, Betsy, can you get to C 2.0? Okay. So what we did was, this entrance, we slid over a couple feet. It's now a 24-foot aisle, and you can see the dashed line. There's a 27-foot access easement for that abutter. Originally the storage came like this and came around. We've eliminated the middle, so there's no obstructions for the abutter to get through. So now we have 2 pieces of storage, outside storage, smaller than before by a couple thousand square feet. We shifted the parking over so that, again, it's unobstructed for the 27 feet. Because we shifted this over, it increased the impervious slightly, but our lot coverage is still under the 80%. And also because we did that, we thinned out the landscaping on this portion, but again, that's still over the required amount.
Is there a gate at the back now, or is it?
No gate at the back.
No gate at the back. So
Fully open,
Yep.
unimpeded. And then I guess we are also requesting a waiver to put this driveway in an access easement.
Has this been discussed with the abutter?
Yes.
Okay.
So this is a 50-foot access easement,
Access and utility right now.
but are you putting parking in that easement?
The parking's in the utility portion of it, but the 27 feet will be solely access. It'll be the new access through.
He has no issue, because normally you don't
No.
put anything permanent in an easement.
No, he's seen this. The written agreement
Right here.
will be reviewed by the building inspector, because that was one of his requirements, is that he won't give a building permit.
Does this easement, some easements are on plans and some easements have language that are recorded at the registry. Does this have language, this easement, recorded?
Not yet.
It does not. So you're going to come up with
Yes.
language to
Yes.
go over with what you said?
Yes.
All right, because down the road, if you wanted this stuff removed,
Right.
you'd have a problem.
Right. Yes. No, he will come up with language. He'll have an attorney write deed for this new and describe, exactly what that 27 feet means.
We should probably, I don't know, Walter, we should probably want to get that language in our hand before we signed off on this, because right now, we have permanent structures on an easement. And you agree? You've been through this before, I'm assuming?
Yeah, I mean, that's why we cleared the 27 feet, so that none of the spaces, none of that, this island, the dumpster pad and stuff would be outside, so he would have his 27 feet unimpeded.
No, I understand that. In the bylaws of Norfolk, you're not supposed to have anything on easements, including trees, anything permanent. I'm just saying, just to make this right for down the road, you've got permanent structures going on a recorded easement, which really is against our bylaws.
What's permanent here?
Well, it's parking that he needs to meet his parking requirements,
Yeah.
nothing else, right? I mean, if they act the easement and get rid of the parking, then there's no parking for this building.
Right.
Yeah, the problem, it's a tough lot because it's so narrow, and you literally lose all of this. There's no building on this side. Almost half the lot is restricted from a building.
John pointed out, is that little horseshoe-shaped thing a guardrail?
This?
Yeah,
That's an island. That's a landscaped island.
landscaped island, all right.
Got it.
Shows on the last
But
page.
you've got two easements identified. One's the 27-foot access easement, and the other's
Yes.
the 50-foot utility easement.
Yeah, so it'd be 27, and then the rest would be utility.
So the language that's important to transfer either into the deed or to the butter, that's the 27-foot
Yes,
access easement.
yes.
You're not-
So he no longer has the full 50 feet of access. He would be restricted to that 27 feet.
Why are you calling the other 50-foot wide section a utility easement then? Why is that necessary to?
Are there utilities under the parking? Is that what's going on?
How you doing? I'm Sam Haddad. I'm the owner of the thing. So I've lived a little bit more than Rich, so I know what's going on.
Okay.
This was 50-foot easement owned by two different parties.
Okay.
The utility easement is owned, like you said, by the town for the electrical and sewer line. It actually starts somewhere at right around right here. There's two lines that go right through this, right through these, and then turn a right turn and go towards the leaching field.
Okay.
The access easement has been owned by by the same person, different entities. Until the land was sold, Richard is aware of in Rentham. Is it Rentham?
Yes.
It is. So they had a problem. The 50-foot easement by law that I had a storage going this way, and he had no access to his utility easement. I believe he wants to use the access easement to take trees out and through this parking lot and until he builds the road from Route 1A to his. That's a temporary thing, right? That I brought to the attention to the town. So now they're happy with what I drew here, which is reducing their easement from 50 feet to 27 feet, with absolutely no obstruction and no. That's always happened. That's gonna be legally written up and recorded, right? And Mr. Bullock is not gonna give me a building permit until he sees that, review that. As for the utility easement, so we don't complicate things in legal, they're still the same as used to before, because I don't want to change the 50 foot and go through another hearing with another owner. So that stays the same, and it doesn't. So all what happens here is I took the storage out, gave him access to the thing, and this retaining wall pushed 3 feet to the left. That's all that's happened since the first approval and this approval.
But,
Utilities are under the parking.
yeah, I mean, you still need the paperwork to, I mean, you've got a plan now showing a 50-foot easement, and you're breaking it down, and you've got two parties involved. And even though the parking is in a utility easement, technically, by our bylaws, you can't put permanent structures on any type of easement for the purpose that they have to go back. So basically, if the town signs off to that, then that's fine, but, you know, all the stuff on the remaining part of this 50-foot easement has to be addressed by the party that owns that, and the party that's the access easement is a little bit more straightforward. It's a single party, and it looks like there's nothing on the access easement, so you can pave over an easement, I do know that, but you can't put the permanent structures on. Have you approached the town on this?
So it's been
On
approved.
the-
Yeah,
on
this
the-
was actually approved before. The parking was in the easement before. Wasn't in as far, but it's
Right, right.
always been there.
Yeah. But to me, from my way of thinking, I mean, if we're gonna go against the town bylaw and encumber an easement, we have to have written proof that it's okay by the parties that own the easement.
Well, John, I'm confused. I still don't understand what permanent structures are on there based on this drawing.
That's an island, that's permanent. This guardrail here is all permanent, that's all inside the easement there.
But,
So
the
the-
permanent island and the pavement are considered the same, in the same term of paving.
What about the guardrail and the fencing?
The guardrail and.
You have a timber guardrail.
And that's
Left-hand
inside the
side, you mean?
easement, huh?
Yeah. That is.
I mean, I know that because when I started off,
And a retaining wall and a
the number
fence.
of deeds I've done to this town, it's required to have that language in every deed about pertaining to easements. And as I said, they don't even want trees in the easements.
So the,
Not to say it's not okay if the town, that's fine, but I mean, just doing this arbitrarily without the other parties signing off would be an issue for me anyway.
I see. Okay,
the-
thank you. Is the property line the last line to the left there?
Yes.
Can the fence be moved across the easement line, between the easement line and the property line?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question again?
Yeah, there's a timber fence that goes along the property line. It's a few feet from the property line. I don't know how many feet, but
Fence is here. We're about, I don't know, I believe it's about 7 feet off.
yeah, so, but it's into the easement, right?
Yes.
So could it be moved to the left to be out of the easement, but still within the property line?
Yes.
closer to the property line.
It's good, although you
Actually, a retaining wall there would just be a higher retaining wall.
Does the easement go to the property line?
yes.
It does, so you.
The easement goes to the property line?
No.
The way it's drawn here, it doesn't go to the property line.
It's confusing because there's also a 5-foot drainage easement. through
So
here.
I see, okay, yeah, yeah.
It's
So it does go to the
confusing.
property
There's a
line.
lot of,
Okay,
there's a lot of easements.
I
There's
see,
a lot of easements there.
yeah.
Yes. And half the lot is, almost half the lot is easement. So, we had to put the building on the other side.
Yep,
This can all be straightened out with the language that's recorded that ties into this plan, very simply.
Yeah, so the easement, the utility easement is actually to the park itself, so it's all the property owners within Shire Industrial Park,
Get to the basin.
to the basin and the leaching, and the septic field in the back.
Yeah.
So it's not just the town, it's actually all the property owners within the park. And there is no, unfortunately, as you know, as you've been going through this, there's no trustees for this, the way it went, because it came through bankruptcy, so there really is no formal entity at the moment to, essentially what the town ended up doing before with converting that wastewater flow, because they went through the two largest property owners in there, which was Island Power Lighting and Mass Bridge, which actually I think they did earlier on say they're okay with this plan as well. We had earlier on in the permitting process.
Mhm.
For the utility end of it,
yep.
the easement came secondarily, and that was from the abutter. So knowing that,
All right,
if,
so.
so if they need, it's theoretically, if they need to work on the drainage line or the wastewater line, it's on their property,
Yeah, right.
and they could be on the hook for restoration, it depends what work needs to be, because those lines are there.
Well, if you have to go through an easement to correct a piping issue, then the burden would be on the owner that
Correct.
paved it. They take that risk when they pave it.
Right.
Although you are allowed to pave.
Yeah.
And presumably, if the town agreed, and the fence was put on the easement, there's a retaining wall there as well, you say, underneath the fence?
Yes, retaining wall here with a wood timber guardrail because
Yeah,
of the height.
How high is the retaining wall?
From this side, we had to get a waiver over 4 feet, so it's probably a couple places that maybe like 5.5 feet high.
So.
On this side, this
Fair
side.
enough. So if the utility line needs to be redone, that retaining wall's gotta come out, right?
Well, because we shifted this over, because the utility line is there's a 2-inch force main. It comes from the whole property.
Yep.
Comes up and then goes here. If it's where it should be, we don't know where it is because there's no as-built on it, but
Oh, jeez.
that we've shifted this way now, it should be on the inside. We should miss it,
It should be on the inside of
Yes.
the.
the inside of the wall.
No, right?
So they're gonna have to field locate this.
Yes. And Sam has tried to find this already.
Right.
I had, what do they call, rotor rotors?
Yeah, yeah.
Inside a box that she's, that's
But we
You're gonna have
could we simplify this conversation, though? I mean, I'm not comfortable approving this knowing that there's no legal agreement.
Yeah, me either, but keep
Right.
going.
So if we approved it, I mean, from a site plan standpoint, I don't know that I have any issues.
I don't either.
Right, assuming there were no easements here, we probably wouldn't have any issues with it. So, in theory, we could either continue it, or we could approve it
Contingent.
on the contingency that the legal items get settled. Right?
Well,
I'm not comfortable with that. Makes it a lot.
So then we have to continue it until the legal items get
Exactly.
settled. I mean, I-
Let the
we're-
gentleman finish his discussion.
There is a box that you clearly see right here, it is existing on the field.
Yeah.
That box is accurately there,
Yeah.
according to
Yeah.
Richard Smith. So it looks like there is the 2-inch portion that comes out of this box, and also next to it, the electrical line, which is down here. They both seem to, we looked at every plan there is that you have in the town. We tried to fit manholes on the other side of the lot, trying to find out which way it was going, to make sure that the retaining wall would never ever be anywhere near those things. But I understand the ramification, building the wall, and let alone taking it after. It's a 10-foot high wall with a fairly large footing. So, it was, you could see that there was a stone wall that was built, that's here from way during the construction, and fairly slopes. Logic says that nothing here has ever been disturbed. There's a, detention pond hasn't been kept up. So it looks like from the previous owner, they went with the sewer and electrical line straight on a skew, right, and then took a right towards the transformer and the lead. So I feel very comfortable that this wall is fine. But if you want me to go further and try to do tests and locate this
There's
thing
no
safely-
test.
No, it's all right. I just think we need to follow the thought of crafting the legal language and getting the people that need to approve that, approving it before we approve this as a board.
Where it's a sewer line, it becomes more important. So basically, where you think it may be is one thing, but basically, if you're working and putting in structures in a 25-foot easement, they could be anywhere in that easement. What you're gonna do is get a survey team out there, and survey the pipe at one end, at the other end, and get an exact line of where that is. It's gonna be done anyway, maybe the town would help you, but that's how you gotta find where the pipe is, because the pipe may be all the way inland, which gives you plenty of room, which makes it better for you, but until you survey that pipe, you're not gonna know,
Well, did you
where
fi-
it is.
Speaking of that, did you find an elbow up the top there?
But it's supposed to have a manhole there, not an elbow.
But it-
And it looks like the site contractor that did the work never put the manhole. He
Jeez.
just put an elbow and turned right. So it's gonna be very carefully done to find that elbow without damaging, So if I have to go through this to get your approval, I will find it and locate it as to show you that it's not in the retaining wall. And I'll get the language on the other side done, and we'll do that, we'll get the continuance plan.
Yeah. Well, you're doing the right things, and if you take that next step, or those next steps, I think you'll probably meet this board's approval.
Okay. And Bob is gonna want to do that anyways.
Yeah, so just clarify, to locate that 2-inch line for the wastewater, you're You need to do some excavation, right? Because it's,
If that manhole is missing, town's gonna have to put that manhole in. There has to be a clean out down there, so.
But I think we're getting caught up in the details again. I mean, the easements exist for a reason, right? They exist because people have rights to the property. So the people that have rights to the property need to tell us that they're okay with what you're proposing.
Yeah.
Right? From what I'm hearing, there's two people that you need to talk to, the town, which I guess is DPW, and your neighbor, which has the access.
No, there's no,
My neighbor, I'm gonna have a whole legal down and recorded in the registry.
Right, so if you, I think what we're saying here, and I'm speaking for the group now, if you come back with those two agreements, you're probably in a good place.
I think there's more unfortunately, people who have to agree, based on what Rich said, there's no association in that area there, and so you have to go and approach each and every one of the existing owners. Is that not right, Rich?
that's quite possible. We need to do that. I think the one thing we want to do, though, they needed to get out there and do some work to be able to find this line. So they kind of need to do some things simultaneously, at least so we can locate that line. And I think at least maybe you can get a blessing from the planning board, at least to go do that, because he doesn't have a building permit. So I know that, as far as I know, I haven't had a chance to circle back with Bob, but we need to get that line located, and it's gonna require some excavation, because it's, as far as I know, there's no other way to,
Got to work with DPW on that.
and then,
If the line is located by a professional surveyor and demonstrated to be away from the retaining wall and clearly with no obstruction, is it being sufficient for the board to look at?
As long as the town
In my
signs
opinion,
off.
that detail's irrelevant to us. That detail's relevant to whoever has rights to your easement,
Right.
right?
They okay?
So
We're all
whoever
set?
has those rights, if they agree to what you find, and put a letter in front of us that says, we're okay with what you're proposing, then we'll be okay.
And that would be the association of the thing? I don't even know that.
well, we'll have to revisit this to make sure we have the,
The right list of people.
yeah.
And as far as the access, it's just, this is a separate document that I present to you next week.
That's fine.
Just a-
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, Rich, that whole place was never as-built?
Are we continuing? Motion to continue?
Oh,
Oh, it's not a public hearing.
Public hearing, right, okay. Let's see. Let's return to Meeting House Road site plan review for large-scale ground-mounted solar array. We have a request for continuance to December 10th meeting at 7:15 PM.
So moved.
Do we have a second? Second. Any further discussion? Just one point, we have not yet received the peer review from Beta, although they've got it in their hands, they're working on it. Okay, all those in favor of, whoop,
Just a second, I did my own peer review, I was here for the last meeting. Do you want any of my comments now? Is there?
excuse me, please grab a microphone, identify yourself, not for us, but for the people at home.
On or not on?
Green, is the green light on? Yep. Okay.
Chris Baker, 38 Union Street, one of the abutters to the project. My question is basically, I did a review of their calcs, their site plans, have, a bunch of comments on omissions, mistakes, errors. I don't know if you want them.
Well, I do, but
Now,
I don't, not,
Submit them to the office.
Okay.
I mean, I can, if you.
They're my gibberish handwritings, yeah.
Are you
Yeah,
an engi-
absolutely.
Are you an engineer, sir?
Yes, registered P,
Okay,
civil.
good.
Yep.
and I welcome your presence, but
Yep.
I'd prefer to do it when they're here as well. So,
Absolutely, I
at the next meeting.
just wanted to ask the question.
Sure.
It'll be nice to match them both up.
So,
But to Betsy's point, if you send them in, we'll read them before the next meeting.
yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so we, grab a mic, please.
Peter Bartoloni, will those comments be given to the meeting house team and their design team prior to, so they can be prepared to respond?
That's a good point. There's no reason they can't.
I really don't think we should.
But,
until-
That information will be forwarded to them.
Well,
I think we should, Walter.
why?
I think that if we're gonna have a peer review, it should go through our engineer rather than
Yeah,
having a
okay.
neighbor come in and abut
yeah,
the process.
well, I think the neighbor has a right to.
It does, but I mean, I don't think he should be dealing with the applicant directly. We should be going through our
Fair
team.
enough, good point. So indirectly, the comments will be given to the Meeting House group through our peer review engineer, who is currently studying the design that they've presented.
And they'll get that before the 10th?
I hope so, because we haven't seen it from the, from the,
Thank you.
okay, good.
My email? Send me to write it down for us?
Okay, so we have a motion on the floor, which has been seconded, to continue the, the site plan review of Meeting House Road. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All right, 7:15. 7:30, so, okay, let's go down to Camger.
Good afternoon, everyone. Dan Iannuzzi, Camger Coatings Systems. Betsy, I believe that you have been provided, and I'll thank you in advance for helping us with that. We met formally, it was on September 10th. We were in front of you with this plan here, where we were looking for some comment back on it. Some of the comments that we did receive, we've tried to take into consideration in a reiteration that we'll go over, just to highlight a few of the key points. There was a structure down here for our water storage tank for our fire suppression system. As you're all aware, there's no water down at that end of town for us. Prior, we were accessing the pond, and in a discussion regarding that, I think we were all in agreement that that may not be the best viable path for a continuance. So we did relocate this structure here. We removed this pad here and put it in the back. Since we've met last, we've kind of had to do some value engineering to this building for cost constraints. It was getting a bit too much for us, so we also pulled the building back, which helped us with some of the conservation issues that we were faced with. We're now within the riverfront, the 10% buffer. We talked about some parking that was in the front, an allocation for parking in the front that was removed and moved to the side. And those were some of the highlights. And again, this is what we were looking at the last meeting. And Betsy, if we can move forward to the next. Yeah, this is kind of what we're calling the master plan. This is a long look at this site. We're not able to accomplish all that we wish to now because of financial reasons. So we've pulled the building back to 20,000 square feet. This is a proposed addition. This is a drive that's coming around. So again, we're calling this kind of the long look master plan. And Betsy, if we can move to the next one, that will really show you where we sit today. So again, the parking has been removed. We did move the structure into the back here. We are within the setbacks here as far as conservation goes. And I think those were some of the concerns. There was some talk about the loading dock in the front. We've got some renditions that will show that. Again, because we had to cut some of this back, there was talk about moving the loading dock to the side, but there was concerns there about kind of encroaching towards the water and the wetland area and keeping away from that. We have difficulties on this side because of our parking allowance that we have to have on that side. And then what we're trying to do is put this in perspective of this is our existing facility that we have today. Obviously, this is Main Street here, and you know we have a current loading dock that's here now. Am I missing anything, Alex, on this drawing that's worthy? Okay. So I think if we go to the next drawing, we're trying to show, obviously, I think we've highlighted it before, we're trying to be nostalgic towards the site and keep it in the theme of what it was. So that's the proposed structure and what it will look like. And this is obviously a look coming from Main Street towards Franklin. We're building up a little bit here. Again, we did take some of the consideration of the feedback regarding the dock in the front. We're trying to have that be hidden as best it can. And I think if you go to the next one, Betsy, that'll show coming the other direction. It's kind of hidden over here. Shows you a little bit of the buildup that we have here. and I don't think we had some of the landscaping that we built into it the last time to give you kind of a good look of what the site looks like. So I guess we're here tonight just putting those changes in front of you, and again, looking for feedback. This is an informal, so any questions or?
Aaron? Anything?
I don't know that my comments would be any different than last time. Seems like things are headed in the right direction. I'd still express the same concerns with the loading dock, although I appreciate the effort to screen it. And I would say that in general, it seems like it's going in a good direction.
Did you have renditions of the loading dock and how it appears on the front of the building?
We don't necessarily have that, other than just trying to put, I mean, as best we can do with the renditions that we have, and the perspective of this is our existing facility with our loading dock here, and this kind of how they offset and mirror each other.
And it sounded like you didn't want to put it on the left-hand side of the building or cut it into the building, I guess was another suggestion that was made last time, just to try and push it back.
Cut it into here?
Yeah, I know you lose some square footage. I'm just wondering what alternatives you looked at, I guess.
Well, we looked at alternatives back here, and I think we ran into some, because of some of the relocation that we had to do here, it kind of made turning kind of, and then again, cost came into play. Removing this eliminated a lot of the site construction costs that we had associated with this site. It's rather large. So it was, you know, with doing this as a phase one here, we really had limitations as to where we could put it, which, you know, kind of made sense.
Is the loading dock at the height of the trailer, or is it ground level where the trailer is recessed into the ground?
We haven't really got into that detail. I imagine I'll let Stu, you.
Sure. Stu Moncrief with Howard Stein Hudson. That loading dock, as it's shown, probably be about a couple of feet below the road. And in addition to that, the landscape area in front of the building between the building and Main Street will be kind of bermed up. We're going to put our septic system in there, but it will be, you know, bermed and landscaped to, you know, provide additional screening as well once that, you know, I mean, landscaping, you can put it in as big as you want, but that'll go to help screen it as well.
But I still don't understand the answer to the question. When the truck backs in, is he backing in on the street level, or is he going down in a depression so that his tailgate is right at the level of the floor? Or is he hitting a loading dock that's up several feet off the floor?
You mean, when you say street level, do you mean between the paving and the building, or you mean the actual street?
When the man backs his...
These are gonna be dock height doors. So does that answer your question?
No, it doesn't. I don't understand the question. I understand the comment. Describe it for me. Take a microphone, please, by the way.
Alex Blowski with Spec Engineering. So I don't think we've finalized the grading plan yet, to answer your question a little bit, but the intent there is, I think that driveway where the trucks are gonna be will be probably slightly above the road level, based on what I'm seeing on the grading.
The point at where the building and the loading dock meet, where you have that 4-foot grade difference, the ground level at that point will probably be a couple of feet below the road.
Yeah.
Okay.
If you have a 14-foot truck there, it's going to be 12 feet above the road. So that's where the berm and the landscaping come into play.
All right, so when, if the tabletop is the floor of your building,
Yep.
when the truck backs in, is this tailgate there, or is it up here?
No, it's level with the... It's
Level with the floor, that's what I
Correct.
thought, okay. All right.
Which is 2 feet above the ground?
4 feet.
4 feet above the ground.
4 feet.
Okay, so there's a 4-foot pit, in other words, that he's backing into.
Correct. The building will be about 2 feet above the road, and then the lower part of the loading dock will be 2 feet below, so that's your 4-foot difference.
Gotcha, thank you.
Okay.
I don't recall, excuse me, what was the reason we couldn't have the loading dock on the right-hand side? Is it that grade going up?
Yeah, so when we did do a couple iterations with trying to move the loading dock to the right, the problem is that there is no other place to put parking on the site without building into the wetland area. So we tried to avoid doing a lot of work on the left side of the building, which kind of forced us to keep the loading dock either in the front corner, or as I think one gentleman suggested, we could probably tuck it along the left side of the building. But when you go to the master plan and trying to build a road around this whole thing, that put us over into that wetland as well. So we kind of got stuck with where we're
How
showing
many
in the
parking
front.
spots do you need for the whole?
Well, that's what I wanted to comment on. I think we're already asking for some form of a reduced allowance regarding parking per the building code.
I think we likely will ask for a reduction in parking just based on the number of employees that they,
The intent
will
of
expect
use.
to have on site. But as far as the loading dock on the right side of the building, there is a 150-foot setback to the residential zone, which is the next property to the east. So if we move if we put a loading dock on the side, we have to basically shift the building to the left by an equivalent amount, and shifting the building to the left toward the river is not ideal for a number of reasons, grade and riverfront and wetland and such. So that's another reason why we can't really put it on the right-hand side. This plan right here shows 40 for phase one, and then if the 5,000 square foot addition gets built at some point in the future, there would be another 10, which would be a requirement. But again, we would look for some kind of a waiver for the parking requirement just based on the number of
Parking
employees.
can't go towards the back of the building?
Excuse me?
The parking can't go towards the back of the building? What is that orange line? Is that the outer riparian area for the river?
The orange is the wetland setback.
Which resource line, though?
That's the wetland, the 100-foot wetland setback is the orange line.
The one closest to the building is the 100-foot one?
The orange one, yes.
This
There's
is
two orange
the
ones on here,
riverfront.
so I'm looking.
There is another, yeah, so the
orange
orange
one?
line, the
Closest
first
to
orange
the
line is,
building is what?
excuse me?
The orange one closest to the building is what line?
That's the 100-foot wetland setback.
It is, and the other one would be?
The other orange line is
Actual
the
line?
wetland line. Yep.
Okay.
And then the blue lines are the river and the riverfront setback, the 200 foot. I mean, I guess we could look at putting parking toward the back of the building for now, and then if the phase two, the 5,000 square foot building addition gets put in, we could then relocate some of the parking along the.
It's too bad because in my experience in that 50 to 100-foot area, the Conservation Commission has always let people work in that area. It's the 50-foot no build they're more concerned with. So if you got permission to work in that 50 to 100, which many applicants do, you could move your parking right out to the back there and then move the loading dock over off the front of the building.
Yeah, it's really not the wetland, it's not the wetland setback that we're concerned with. It's the amount of area that we're disturbing within the 200-foot riverfront setback. So we're limited to 10% of the property area that's in that.
Did you do numbers yet on what 10% is?
Yeah, we did, yeah. Yeah, so the original plan that we showed, the first plan that we looked at tonight was the original plan that we had back in September, and that was graded out, and that was actually over the 10%. So what we did, and Betsy, if you could go back one to the master plan. So you'll see that dark line that wraps around. That's now a retaining wall. We had to do that to bring that 10% impact area within the riverfront down below the 10%, because like I said previously, we were exceeding that. So that's why the wall's there. So the main concern with this site is the riverfront, not the wetland setback.
I believe at the last meeting, too, there was some comments on the site as far as drainage. Stu, maybe you can explain a little bit. I'm not sure if we have that plan here.
Yeah, I think, I'm not sure if it was with the informal meeting we had with the town departments or if it was the last meeting that we were here with you in September, but there was a comment about the drainage, and I guess you want to see more kind of green type drainage versus traditional, pipe and infiltration ponds. So we've looked at doing a rain garden in the back, and we'll, once we get the site layout finalized, we'll do more kind of bioretention kind of intermittently in pockets throughout the site to kind of meet that requirement. So, and you'll see in the top left that kind of odd, looks like an exclamation point, and that's the rain garden that we have. And what we would do is we would oversize that as part of the Phase 1 work, so that if they do come through and build Phase 2, put in the new building, put in the additional pavement, all the drainage will essentially be in place to be able to just, just put in whatever new catch basins we need and then just connect to that rain garden in the back.
I'll tell you, with everything sloping this way, I'm surprised you can't do this whole drainage system low impact with swales.
I mean, they haven't submitted any of their drainage, they don't have their septic. I mean, this is all conjecture at this point to have this conversation, so.
A lot of it is. You're adding probably 40,000 square feet of impervious, so you do have to infiltrate some of it. So,
You show, what'd you say, 40 parking spaces?
correct, yeah,
With a potential of 50 if you put the other
correct.
additional. What do you really need based on your employees?
I think it's, what'd you say, 25 or so for Phase 1, and,
Again, they don't even know how many parking spaces they want yet.
yeah.
So
Yeah, it's kind of TBD. I
look
think
forward to seeing the drawings.
I think we talked about a reduction, but yeah, we need to iron that out.
Well, I think my point is that if you need, let's say, just for discussion, half the parking that you show there, you could shove the building further to the right and give yourself more room to put the loading dock on the side of the building, on the left side of the building.
Yeah, we can't move the building, though, to the right because of the 150-foot setback to residential, though. So the building's already up against that 150 feet, so we can't slide it anymore.
Tough site, yeah.
It is.
Okay.
Thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
The next item on our agenda is a request for continuance for Bristol Pond Estates for the January 2020 meeting, not December, but January.
Do you want to read the notice?
Pardon me?
Read the notice?
Yeah.
Yep.
Notice is hereby given in accordance with Chapter 40A of Massachusetts General Law and the rules and regulations of the subdivision of land. The Norfolk Planning Board will hold a public hearing on Tuesday, November 12th, 2019 at 7:30 in Room 124 at the Norfolk Town Hall to consider a waiver request to allow the installation of 2-inch and 2.5-inch caliber trees to be planted in the street right-of-way and open space area rather than the required 3-inch caliber trees of the definitive open space subdivision Bristol Pond Estates, a 14-lot residential subdivision dated October 4th, 2005, with revisions dated through May 25th, 2006, prepared by GLM Engineering Consultants Incorporated of 19 Exchange Street, Holliston, Mass. The applicant is Nasuti Family Realty Trust in Franklin, Mass. The applicant is also requesting a modification to not install the wood chip trail on Lot 17.
Thank you, Gary. So, as I said, we have a request for continuance until our January 2020 meeting. Do we have a date for that?
January 14th,
January 14th. At,
7 p.m.
no, we already got 7 on 6 Hill Street, don't we?
That's a different date.
I would just say, it's okay, 7 p.m., right?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right. 7:45. It's 7:45. I squint. We have a 15 Lincoln Road, another public hearing that should be read into the record.
Notice is hereby given in accordance with Mass General Law, Section 40A, and the Norfolk Zoning Bylaws, Section F11. A public hearing will be held on Tuesday, November 12th, 2019, at 7:45 p.m. in Room 124 at the Norfolk Town Hall, 1 Liberty Lane, Norfolk, Mass., regarding a site plan application for property located at 15 Lincoln Road in Norfolk, Mass. The applicant, NextGrid Incorporated, San Francisco, California, is proposing construction of a large-scale ground-mounted photovoltaic solar array, including demolition of existing structures, construction of access drive, site preparation, installation of site utilities, and construction of an infiltration basin. The property is located in the B4 zoning district, reference Assessors Map 22, Block 76, Lot 19. The plan and application are available for public inspection in the office of the Norfolk Planning Board during the hours of 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. Monday through Thursday.
Okay, so
Continue until,
we have a motion, a request for continuance until our December 10th meeting at 7:30 PM.
So moved.
second.
Any further discussion? Rich, did you have anything else to add to the 15 Lincoln Road before we take our vote?
The only additional item would be that the property presently is owed significant amount of back taxes, so the discussion was with the applicant, Next Grid, who intends to purchase the property, that would have to be subject to time of conveyance of the property paying all the back taxes, which they at least, they agree to, so,
This property is also a hazardous waste dump, right?
yeah, so there is,
Under court order for cleanup. This is Colin Wade, isn't it?
correct,
Yeah.
yes.
So there's an outstanding court order for cleanup on this whole site, right?
So I have to have clearance from the DEP as well.
Okay. Any further discussion before we vote? All in favor of a continuance until our December 10th meeting? Say aye. Aye.
Is that
Okay.
at 7?
And now we go to, say again?
I was just asking, it's the only one for the December 10th, so it's...
That was at, what,
7?
what'd you say? What,
7:30.
7:30, okay. Next up is 18 King Street, the KPMS
Sorry, yes.
request for site plan modification for driveway width.
So, Mr. Chairman, we had reached out to Phil Paris from Beta Engineering relative to reducing the access aisle width from 24 down to 20 feet. Reviewed it with police and fire, and they were both, if you were forwarded, email from, I know fire chief for certain. Police chief was a verbal conversation. They're okay with the reduced width to 20 feet. So I had the school just come in informally tonight and hopefully get a blessing from the planning board, and then they could update and modify the plans instead of spend the
Yeah, fair enough.
time and money to
Yep.
update the plans for prior to endorsement.
Do you have a, Betsy, do you have a plan to show us what the existing plan is?
I can find an existing plan for you.
In the meantime, please introduce yourself and
Sure. Larry Azer, Director of Finance and Operations for KP. This is Joe Zahner, our Facilities Manager. So as Rich said, after the original approval from the board a couple months ago, we did some price costing out. And in order to go from 20 feet to 24 feet, we would have to tear up the existing and then redo the entire driveway, which was way beyond the cost that we'd be looking to do, as you can see on the plan there. So it would require widening this whole patch down here, which is, I don't know how many feet that is, but into the tens of thousands of dollars to do that. So we brainstormed a little bit to see if we could come up with some other and it was going to be two-way traffic, and going down and going out, going back out, and we looked at it and thought, well, if we just made it one way coming down, and it would still be two-way, but limited traffic. We were going to have the traffic go all the way around the building. What we're going to do is stop it here, so people can basically just come down here to where there's going to be 22 spaces and come back out. And it's just the folks that work down there, the administrators, and the rare visitor that we get You know, we've been occupying the space right now since about late July, August, and we might get if we're lucky, we might get half a dozen visitors a week. So besides the people working down here, there's really no other traffic that comes down. So, and almost every single person down here works until well after the school day gets out. So anybody leaving here wouldn't be interfering with any bus traffic, any parent traffic, any kids walking around. So we think, having been through that way, if we just have to pave down here for the parking spaces, that should be a more cost-effective solution that hopefully will satisfy everybody's needs.
Thank you. Questions from board members?
There's a paved road that goes completely around the building right now?
Yeah, there's an access road, so it comes down here, down around here, and then it goes all the way around behind the building, and you can't see it there, but then it comes all the way back around to the...
None of that's changing. That's
Correct. Yeah, the only, you get a couple of deliveries come in here. There's a trash dumpster back here that gets emptied, what, once a week? And other than that, there's really no traffic that goes behind the building.
Is that wider than what you're proposing? The existing road, say on the back side of the building, is that wider than this narrower?
This current road that we have on the plan right here is wider than the road out back. That's a
Wider.
one-lane
Oh, yeah,
emergency
right.
road.
Yeah.
Sorry. And if you go to the next slide, next page, Betsy. That's the proposed 23 parking spaces.
Parking right here. And it still has the road here. So basically people come in and park, and then we would go out and then just exit that way. So people here would not be exiting out through the back there. So there'll be no, wouldn't be any issues with behind the building.
Any further questions from board members? Rich, any comment you want to add?
No, I think this was again a reasonable alternative. We certainly, I don't think, wanted to have people going behind the back of the school
Right.
for a variety of different reasons. So, and it's a low. I mean, there's not a lot of people coming in and out of here. So it seems like a reasonable approach.
Yeah. All right, so what you're hearing from the board is, sounds reasonable. We'll be looking forward to seeing a revised set of plans, and we'll probably give you the okay when those plans land on our table.
Great. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Thanks for your time.
All right, next item up is 16 Sharon Ave.
They are here. Oh, all right.
You're here to speak to 16 Sharon Ave, right?
I am.
There they go. Is she on? Little green light?
It is.
You're
I'm
good.
Mike Sosi, representing A&A Sosi LLC and MAS Building and Bridge for both 16 and 18 Sharon Ave. Yes. So am I?
Joining you, or?
No. No. So do we have some departures from the approved site plan?
They're listed on this drawing, right?
Exactly,
Can
so
we
I don't-
put that up there so the board can see that list?
I can, it's on there, and let me just zoom in a little bit.
Yes, okay, there it is over to the right, yep. Can you blow it up a little more?
I think that's it.
Think that's it? Okay, well, you gotta strain a little bit, but there it is, there's the list. Why don't you walk through that for us?
Sure. Yeah, so the first three issues are related to, the first one is related to the back parking area, which is solely a parking area. It's not a drive-through. There's no driveway. It's just you'll pull in and turn into park and pull out. That width was supposed to be 24 feet, and it's reduced to 23'1". So the parking spaces are the correct size. It's the distance between them and the berm behind them that is reduced. It was a layout issue between us and our paver, as you'll hear that over the next couple items. We're hoping that we're able to leave that mainly because it's not a drive-through type area, right? It's strictly for driving in and driving out as far as parking. There's no traffic behind that, and that's on the back side of the building on the left side of the page.
Yep.
I can just walk through all of them. Does
Sure,
that
go ahead,
Make
yeah,
sense.
yeah.
Numbers 2 and 3, similar issues between us and our paver relative to the location of berm. So on the left side, parking spaces by the number 6, I believe, in the irrigation well.
What was the number originally that was reduced from?
7.
7, okay.
Yep. It's now 6, just based on, there was a very narrow width left based on the layout width to make sure that we had the correct width of the other spaces. We eliminated that one and striped it as such. On these two, the required number of spots is 26, and as this is built, there are 30. 30 are provided, so that's with that one being eliminated. Item 3 on the list is similar, but we did stripe it. We didn't recognize it until afterwards. Along the curb in the front, along the roadway, that's the way the striper did his layout, so those are all the proper width, but one of the spaces is 8'5" instead of the 9 feet. It tapers down because of the way he did his layout, based on the back of the curb and not the side of it. So, again, as far as functionality, we believe it's functional. We would prefer to leave it as is. If we do anything else, it would be eliminating another space in the front and re-striping that area, so it would essentially lose another spot unless we relocate all the curb and landscape areas. Item number 4, we installed an irrigation well that was permitted to the building department, Board of Health, and electrical department. So
Where is it?
that is, again, right by the number 6 on the drawing. Right here.
Okay.
That's the spot on the left side of the building that was eliminated, and this is the spot in the front that's 8'5" instead of 9 feet. We had previously spoken to the board about some modifications. We needed to add a wall due to some elevation differences in the front of the building, which forced us to relocate some of the plantings that we had on the original plan, and also the walkway, which accounts for a couple of these items. So the plantings were just relocated in other planting areas as shown on the drawings. So the number is still the same as what it was before. In fact, I think it's increased a little bit. Another issue with that is some of the trees. We're supposed to, per a note on our drawings, have 5 trees, 3-inch caliper. We have 5 that are 2 3/4 to 3-inch caliper. We have 3 additional ones that we put in that are 1 3/4 to 2-inch caliper, and we have 1 that is tiny, which we really just put in to get the count to where it needed to be, and that was late. That took us an extra couple weeks to get that. We really just put that in to get things cleaned up before we came in front of you with the as-built. The walkway and plantings on the north side of the building, so that's right here. The gas needed to be installed here. This walkway was going to be up against the building. We just slid that out to the back side of the berm. So it's the same amount of planting area. It's just flip-flopped the planting area and the walkway. And again, that's because the gas meter is right up against the building. We also installed a flagpole and a granite base. That's right here. Flagpole meets all standard requirements. The granite base is a memorial to an employee of ours that we had lost. And drainage pipe inverts, there was minor changes to the drainage pipe inverts, but those were reviewed by United consultants and deemed to be acceptable, at least on their end.
Questions from the board? How does the board feel about the tree caliper issue?
Fine.
No issue. No issue. Good. Aaron?
comment.
Okay. All right, any additional discussion here? We have the final as-built plans in...
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes, we do.
right. And we have them. You have them, and we have them, right?
And we have them, yes.
We have them, okay. Rich, any other comments you want to make?
No, not this time.
Okay. So we need a motion to accept these as minor modifications, correct? Sue, do we have such a motion?
So moved.
Okay, do we have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion on those before we vote? All right, hearing none. All those in favor of accepting these changes as minor modifications to the site plan, please say aye. Aye. It is a vote.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
You're welcome. All right. Are you also here to speak for 18? I figured you were, but thought I'd ask. All right.
Are you looking for permanent occupancy recommendation?
Do we need another motion to
I'm not sure how that works.
recommend
so-
to the building commissioner?
Yes, please.
Recommended permanent occupancy for 16 Sharon Ave.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion on that point? Rich, anything else to add to that?
No.
All right. All those in favor say aye. Aye. You got it.
Great, thank you.
Now we want to tackle it.
Now we want to tackle the erector set.
Exactly. So our company that occupies the buildings, MAS Building and Bridge, is we have two divisions. We're a heavy highway, heavy civil contractor. We do bridges, roads, dams, that kind of stuff from Mass DOT and other states. We also have a structural steel division. So we erect structural steel buildings. We have approximately 45 iron workers and do work all around the state and the surrounding states as well. We're constantly training people. We're constantly trying to attract people. We're an open shop company, and this is just something, an idea that we saw from other companies around the country that we're affiliated with, and feel like it's something that we need. So this is basically a training tower, and it looks enormous when you look at the drawing. That's why I want to make sure I got in front of you, and I did speak to Mr. Bullock about it, and Rich as well. It's a little bit of an anomaly as far as permitting and as far as site planning. So what we did do, this is designed by a PE. So as far as permitting, we wouldn't build this even if we had a permit until we had PE stamp for the foundations and the structure as well. Our intent with this would be to put it behind our facility. I think you have another drawing as well which shows the location. It is in yellow on the back here. So our original building that we occupy now is 18 Sharon Ave. That building height is 27 feet. The height of this would be 20 feet when erected. It's a 30 by 30 footprint. We would intend to put the foundations for it underground a couple feet and then put manhole covers over top of them so that we can continue to use that as a storage area. We intend to keep it in its down condition. So it would just be a stockpile of steel out in the back of our facility, and we would expect to erect it 3 to 4 times a year. It's going to require a crane. It's 5 or 6 guys, so we don't want to have the expensive. It's not going to be something we're going to use weekly, but we would put it up as part of the training, work on it for a few days, and then take it down, store it until we bring another group back in to do the work.
Is that on a lot by itself, Mike, or is that behind one of your existing buildings?
No, that is that's our storage area. So this right here, this lot 12 is this entire area. So this area right here is our current storage area. This is the building that we occupy right now.
And who will see the tower when it's up?
No one.
Is it out in the street?
No, street, Sharon Ave's right here.
It's right behind
So the only, lot 14A is that big empty masonry building. So they would, at some point, assuming that gets built, be able to see it, but you can't see it from the backside of the police station either. And the building that we were just speaking about, 16, is right here. between
How do-
us and the
what-
police.
What category is that under zoning?
Our property,
Are you calling this an accessory building, or?
it's honestly why I'm here. I mean, it's not going to be a full-time building.
What did the commissioner say?
So come talk to you
All
guys.
right, he's the zoning guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's an anomaly. I understand that. So we're not sure how to proceed with it. We think it's necessary for us as far as, you know, being in business and being able to provide training to our employees.
You won't be going for a permit of occupancy on this building.
No. No.
It's like an erector said, it's a training facility is really what it is.
It is, and I would assume that we would have the building department look at the foundations that we place.
Right.
The ankle bolt sizes, things like that, but outside of that, we'd give them the PE stamp drawings, the ones that you have now.
Right.
They're complete. And we'd give a separate drawing that would just show the foundations, the rebar layout, and that kind of stuff. So I would assume we'd get a permit from them to confirm that we construct those properly.
Do they have to get a building permit every time they construct the?
Great question.
Woods.
I'm not sure.
In that water tower.
There's a foundation.
So
that's
it's
a permit.
owned by the town.
So I don't know.
And a
Yep.
demolition permit each time they take it down?
No. Nope.
So there's a question here that was raised,
I'm sorry?
I'm sorry, Peters.
Yes. Yep.
So this is a permanent structure because you're putting in a foundation. So does it meet the setbacks on the back and the sides of that lot?
I'd have to check that.
You don't know.
I don't.
Or you should find that out.
Yep.
And then the other things maybe Rich could find out with, make Bob Bullock commit since he's in charge, or maybe go to town council. I'm not sure. I don't see any harm in it, but especially when it's in the back of the building. I think training is good.
Yeah.
So it's,
The building regulations are designed around an occupied building.
Yes, they are.
This isn't an
Yeah.
occupied building.
No, this is,
It's a training tool.
it's a
Yeah.
training tool, yeah,
Yeah.
that's what it is.
And
yeah.
you're right, the footings need to be permitted and constructed properly. And then the rest of it's a training tool.
But you don't,
Right.
so the point is, you don't need a building permit every time you want to erect it, I don't think.
I think
That wasn't our intent, but
But
again, we're
Maybe Bob will
coming.
tell you you do.
I think he does,
John thinks you do. So,
but not a demolition permit.
but
Well,
that's
why one and
gonna,
not the other? I mean,
I know, good question.
that's got to be covered with Bob.
So you'd have to close out that permit each time, you'd have to.
Are you gonna be,
inspections
you have to
on
be
it.
Doesn't
welding
Why-
these
but the
iron
permit, you
pieces
take out a
together, right?
permit for the health and safety of the
No.
public. There's-
They
there's
just
no
get
When you're
public
up
in
20
this building.
feet, how are the
What-
iron pieces gonna interlock?
It's designed so that it has multiple different types of connections, all the possible different connections that our
No
guys
permanent
made.
connections.
I'm sorry?
No permanent connections,
No,
obviously.
no, all
You're
can be
taking
taken
it down.
apart. They're all bolted so that they can be taken down.
I see.
It's a learning facility, so each connection will look different from the one next to it, because the intent is that
I see.
they're not, when they get out in the field in a true building, seeing a connection for the first time that they haven't run into or
I think
you
that
know,
all that
don't know
really
how to do.
matters for foundations in the
Yeah, I
right
think so
spot.
too, yeah.
I think other than that, he's got a building in perpetuity, which we have a few of in town, so this would at least have a benefit, like training people.
Yeah. That's a great idea.
New one.
Yeah, it's,
See new things every time.
I think it's a great idea.
Yeah, I
oh,
do too.
yeah, I mean,
Good luck.
Yep.
Thank you. So just talk to Bob about that, and,
Make sure your foundation
yeah,
complies with
we'll do
zoning.
that, and we'll check into the setbacks.
Yeah,
as well.
check the setbacks, right.
Okay,
Thank you.
great. Okay, thank you. I appreciate your time.
Okay, the next item up is Oak Knoll Estates Old Cart Path request for curbing modification from granite to monolithic berm. Sir, grab yourself a mic.
Last meeting, we were here, was concerns about the slope out front,
Right.
the rock. And I suggested we build a stepped wall, but it would actually be built around existing pieces of ledge. So I did what I could to make it look decent. So I might have some pictures of it.
yeah, pictures.
You might get out before midnight.
just jinxed us.
I'm not acknowledging what.
11:59 is what I meant.
So I went out there today and took a few pictures, just so we could have them for the meeting. There was, when I walked up to the top, I did notice at the top, it looked like it actually looked like it wasn't filled in quite a bit at the top. There was a space probably 3 feet wide by 8 feet long roughly that was about 2 feet deep that looked soft. So it looked like if someone were to walk in there, they might get a leg caught or something.
Yeah, I could only, the machine could only reach so high because
That's what I kind of
you know,
figured.
I did like everything I could to, I mean, a lot of the rock, it looks like comes out, but it's because some of those big rocks is the ledge. So I kind of used those to make it look as natural as I could.
I did see how you stepped it up, and there were a few pieces that kind of protruded out, but as you said, I think that's because those were existing pieces. There was not a whole lot you could do with that.
So where is that depression up at the top behind the top set of rocks there?
Yeah.
It's the big piece of rock on the top.
Yeah.
It's kind of to the right of that.
It's,
the right.
yes, it's to the right of that, yeah.
So is it your intention to fill that in with something?
I really didn't have any intention to fill it in. I thought it would just kind of, it's kind of flat up there, and then it's just look like a hole. So,
My guess would be over time.
Yeah, leaves and
with
everything else
just
are just collecting
natural, just rain and just natural weather, it would eventually kind of all settle in and fill in over time.
Is that on the right-of-way property?
what's that?
Is that on the right-of-way property, or is that on your butter's property?
Yeah, it's, there's an easement there for the butter, and some of it's on the right of way.
Did he okay that?
He was here last meeting, so he knew we were
So
doing
we
it.
actually you have an email, I reached out to Bob Paskey, who's the butter, to opine about what was done. I believe you had his
Is he
email
okay-
back
is
to
he
the
okay with
board. Yeah.
Okay, so that's one issue. Any other questions on that issue, sir? And the other issue is the monolithic berm, as I understand it. You got Bob McGee to bless that, I presume?
Yeah, Rich, yeah.
Rich did?
Yes. This is one of the, there's a few, not too old subdivisions, but that Bob had kind of used as to move in that monolithic berm
Yep.
as opposed to the granite.
Yep.
This is one of them.
This is one of them, yeah, okay,
Correct.
right, yeah, okay.
And with his pending retirement, I thought it made sense to formalize it with the board, because these were field things that were discussed.
All right, so on the plan, it's slope granite, and, okay, so we need a motion to make a minor modification from slope granite to monolithic berm.
So moved?
Do you have a second?
Second?
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, next item, Mill River Estates, Ariana Lane. Request curbing mod from granite to monolithic berm, and request to swap plantings on 4 Ariana Lane for more appropriate turtle habitat. Rich, you want to walk us through this one, please?
Sure. We had, I walked the property with the chairman and Jan DeLonga to look at the plantings behind Lot 4. And the way the plantings were originally proposed, they weren't matching up 100% with, for her turtle habitat. So Janet, I believe she forwarded you an email with some alternate planting recommendations
Yep.
that were more in keeping with turtle habitat to be planted there to naturalize, similar to what was done over at Fox Run as well.
Yep.
over on the backside. And so we wanted to present that to the board. It was something actually that Janet had previously walked the property with the developer, Tony DiMartino, about the plantings to try to plant it that was more appropriate for the turtles. So we had discussions, and then she came up with some ideas to swap out the plants. So that was one aspect of it. And then the second one is the curbing as well. There's another street that Bob recommended going with the monolithic Cape Cod berm. So I wanted to clean up those two items before. I say before because Bob is, as you know, retiring. So
Yep. The handout that you have there in front of you, if you turn to that second page there, look at this map. The area we're dealing with is the one which on the original plan is populated by all those trees. The bracket around them says approximately 250 feet. And instead of planting all those trees, the proposal is to plant a number of shrubs and bushes that Janet has specified. And I walked that area with her and the developer and Rich, and it makes sense to me to do that. So, but I'll take your comments and questions. The developer, by the way, is willing to do what's on the plan. He's willing to do whatever Janet says. He's willing to do whatever what coaching and guidance we give him.
So who's requesting the change?
well, technically it's the developer, but he's trying to work with the town because it was initiated by actually the conservation agent to,
And the conservation agent is saying the shrubs are better for the turtles than the trees?
yes. Based on what was part of the, it's over behind Fox Run, behind the where the horse farm. Yeah. If you go back, that whole area is another area with the same type of turtles, and it's,
Did they review the plan originally?
We had to.
yeah, they reviewed it.
What changed?
I can't speak to the,
As I look at this, Erin, what they have here is a number of trees going into a no-build zone. So basically, when you're putting that many trees into a resource area, you're really actually affecting habitat and doing harm. Whereas if you put in low-growing bushes, it's less invasive. And it also, the plants you pick probably provide a food source for the species that are over there. So
They
it's
do,
like
yeah.
it's got a compound benefit then.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think I get it. I just don't understand why the trees were approved in the first place.
Me neither.
I can't.
I guess because the subdivision rules, they say that maybe they went through Concom before they went through the planning board, but
I guess the only thing I could say, not being here back then, and I don't think any of you were, I'm not sure perhaps the coordination level between two entities as far as what to spec out for that area. I don't have a better,
Are the folks in the area aware of the change?
you mean the development itself?
Yeah.
No, we didn't send out a notice to, this is a vacant lot, so this is a to-be-sold lot.
Yeah, but if they bought their house because there were gonna be trees in this area, are they gonna comment?
This house here, first picture. This house here is not built, this one is. So this is, at the moment, it's a vacant
It's a
lot.
fair question. Both are occupied houses abutting a meadow area that's
Yeah.
already there? We didn't,
But the site plan was approved for the neighborhood, and
Gotcha.
presumably the people that bought houses in the neighborhood know that. So they should
so
be,
it's up to you. You can modify it without notice, or you can, if you want to, just send notice to them to say that's going to propose change. It's not, it's one of those items within the scope. It's a construction. It's not a,
well, if you notify them, it becomes a major modification with a public hearing.
Who has the strongest opinion, the strongest influence on which way this goes? Is it the conservation
Conservation
group?
by far, yeah, no question.
So,
They're the
to Eric's
specialists
point,
in
they
this.
first wanted trees, but now they're saying, oops, this is the better way to go.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not sure if the conservation group wanted the trees.
They approved it.
They approved, yeah, they approved them.
They mainly approved the disturbance line for the construction. Probably when they went to the planning board and our requirements for levels of trees like this around basins for privacy, they probably put them in there standardly.
Right.
An awful lot of trees there, boy. Those trees are
Yeah,
pretty close together. too.
Very close together, yeah. Yep. So from a procedural point of view, if we notify the abutters here,
We can notify them, the two abutters that,
yeah,
on both sides
yeah,
of the proposal, and with the specification and rationale, and get their opinion.
I think we should. Yeah, just to give them the opportunity to know what's going on.
Okay.
But I'm in favor of the proposal.
I agree with Walter. Yeah, we do that.
Okay.
I
Well,
suppose we should get a revised site plan too, right?
Yeah, so those could be reflected on the as-built plan, if you want
Yeah,
to pick them up.
we should pick them up on the as-built. Yeah.
Definitely be picked up on the as-built.
Yeah.
Yeah, except people that continue to buy lots in the neighborhood are looking at an approved site plan that's no longer accurate.
Well, we would have that in the record for that particular lot.
All right.
Do you have any idea how many unsold lots there are in that neighborhood?
There's three.
Three.
Yeah.
We're not talking about a lot, so, okay.
There's one.
Yeah, so the one lot, this is the back area, the one lot, which is for Ariana. There's the house built, and then across the street, the other house is built. So it's really those two houses on the same side,
Yeah,
because the house eventually would be
Yeah.
blocking the,
and the other
View
two
it.
empty lots are
At the
way
end
down
of the
other
cul-de-sac?
the
Not
cul-de-sac.
affected by it. Yeah.
Not
No.
affected by it,
Okay.
no. Okay, all right. Any
we
other?
could, we'll put that on, we'll send it out for the December meeting.
Yes, that's fine. All right, we need a motion to make a minor modification to accept a monolithic berm instead of sloped granite for Mill River Estates.
Contingent upon notification of the neighbors. So moved.
Second?
I think that's
Um,
the address, that is. Well, you want to do it on,
You got a big,
why
yeah, so.
don't you just do it the next meeting? No, you don't need to vote on it tonight.
Well, I mean, if we're contingent on the neighbors, then it's,
That's a little bit different.
yeah, and to be honest, I don't think the trees at the back of the basin, which is not disturbing anybody's privacy by looking at a basin, because they're
The
in
contingency,
pond.
the contingency isn't upon acceptance by the neighbors, it's simply on notifying the neighbors.
Right, I never went that way, but I think that on something like this is a big change.
You're saying they should have the opportunity
Well,
to talk to.
this change is in six figures. So, if neighbors bought with the idea, and I know this firsthand, about the idea that they were gonna have sloped granite, just giving them monolithic berm would be, to many people, a big deal. So, including two of your neighbors. So I think that really should be maybe more formalized as a major modification.
The changing the curb you're talking about, not the plantings?
Not the plantings, no, just the
Okay.
the curbing's a big deal. I know Bob wants to change everything to monolithic berming, and he has his reasons, and I tend to agree with him, but when something's already done, then, it's a big deal for people that are already in there, so.
Okay. So we can send out,
Yeah, send out
Notice.
notices, and we'll make a public hearing for next meeting.
what we'll do is, if you don't mind, we'll send notice to the abutters, not necessarily notice to the paper. Is that,
I'm sorry, say that again?
We would send notice to the abutters.
Yep.
But not to the Sun Chronicle to put it in the paper. Would,
That's fine.
I mean,
That's
would
fine.
save us some money on
That's fine.
advertising.
That's
I
fine.
mean, just, the people
Yep.
that in development will send it to.
Yeah, I understand. That's fine.
You're in charge of the administration.
That's
Yeah.
fine. Now, so we had a motion on the floor with a second. How do
We
we?
will withdraw the motion.
Okay.
All right, Chair needs a 2-minute comfort break, and we'll be back.
You okay with that, Aaron? You gotta withdraw.
Motion to approve.
Withdraw.
I think there was issues that were raised through the process, and very good points, and applying, as I said at one of the meetings, you go through a planning process with input from the public, and then you draft the bylaw, and then you play it out in different scenarios. And I think when it got played out under different scenarios, that's where a lot more questions were raised. But some of those questions will need answers, and we can come back and provide some answers to. And then some we're not going to be able to provide all the answers, because there's a lot of variables that go into that as far as what the build-out may be down the road. I know there was certainly concerns about uncapping building footprint sizes that clearly came through. You probably saw the recommendations from the advisory board. I think they recommended 3 changes. There was quite a bit of concern actually around parking, actually. That was a big concern that was raised. So I think the whole notion of parking and calculating parking, but having, sharing of parking, peak demand, off-peak demand, and some of those things we need to kind of vet out a little bit more for people to get a better grasp on, to understand how they work. And in some cases, they may not work, but so that was a point that was raised. And impacts associated with it, traffic impacts, impacts on services to the town and so forth. So I think it made sense that we learned quite a bit through. And then issues were raised on the existing boundaries of the district that, again, we weren't touching boundaries, but as this process unfolded, I think there was a few people who live adjacent to the district, all of a sudden, I think, realized, well,
Live within the district.
within the district, that X, Y could happen under existing zoning, let alone the future zoning. So those issues were raised that we need to go back and evaluate. So I think it makes sense to, hold off. Because I think, interesting enough, I think the recommendations from the advisory board, I would have almost anticipated those to be more challenging at town meeting issues to try to move forward on. So I think it's more of a, and again, I think secondary point of this is it's to try to get as much as we can right. There's not an agenda per se here. It's to look at the zoning, try to articulate what could happen in town center, and I think kind of bring that forward, because some of this is it really kind of bases it back in 1992. That was the kickoff master plan, if you will, focusing on town center. And then there's the 07. There's a lot of planning that's going on since then. So kind of refresh that vision, I think. Because I've heard of a lot of.
What's happened since 2007?
What, as far as, there was a master plan update in 2007.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's connecting people with the vision.
construction-wise?
Sorry, Rich. Go ahead and finish.
I know.
I'm having issues over here.
All right, I'm sure. But like I said, I think, it's one of those things that all of a sudden there was this there's development happening in the surrounding communities, and that development might happen in Norfolk Center. That's not what we want to see happen, even though there was different requirements within the bylaw. There's 40B out there that's happening within surrounding communities and within the community, and so there's a surrounding, and then coupling with, the school committee coming forward about school enrollment and projections, and so I think it was just a perfect storm of a lot of different things going on that it makes sense to kind of step back, answer some of those questions, particularly around, I think, the growth related to schools and school-aged children. We want to kind of work through, because that's an important component regardless of what we do related to this work.
Before we get into it here, assuming that what you propose happens, what's the plan between now and the next time we bring this forward?
So the plan would be to go look at each one of those issues that came up. There was the boundary issues that came up.
Who's going to look at it?
It would be the B1 committee. So the B1 committee, I'd have to go back. One of the things that came up, just to go back. The B1 committee, we had an advisory board member on that B1 committee. He came a couple times. He wasn't able to make it. The advisory board, for a variety, I don't know all the reasons, but they had no representation at the B1 committee, although this board actually specifically had a B1 advisory board member. So at that meeting I was at October 30th, it became very clear to me that, they need to have somebody at the B1 meetings from now to when it comes back to the spring to be able to be more involved in that process all the way through. Because a lot of the questions that were raised, I think if they had their member there, perhaps they could have reported out to their body. Because there was really kind of, it was recreating the whole when I sat there, it was, it was starting from scratch, essentially answering questions, which
That had to be frustrating.
which was,
Considering the late, it was 11th hour, it was the last
Right.
at
hurdle,
that,
last approval hurdle before town meeting.
right? So that's clearly that needs to happen. And I think there can be other citizens could participate as well. I mean, I think we had asked for volunteers. We didn't have a lot when we first put out the request, but now I think there's awareness of it. There's probably more citizens that would want to be involved. If you recall, we had actually, we weren't knocking down the door originally, but maybe that was for a variety of different reasons, whatever that may be. But I think from that point, we do have people. So whether they're on the committee or just participate in the committee meetings certainly would be helpful. And then try to, again, address some of the points that are raised, design. So we need to finish up the design guidelines. What I'd like to probably do is actually take them and get them adopted, so they're actually in place before the zoning. Since we're going down parallel tracks, we could talk about that. But that's one thing to consideration. But I think there's some things that could be dialed back that weren't that hard to dial back, if you will. I think.
Okay, so you're going to work with the B1 committee.
Yep.
And you're going to try to bring it back for the spring town meeting?
Yeah.
Questions from board members?
Would you contact the people specifically that raised issue in the different meetings? So in our meeting, there were people, is it Rockwood?
Boardman.
I'm sorry, Boardman, yes. Would you?
We're here.
Oh, but would you contact, would you contact those people directly and ask them to at least attend or participate? And it's not just that, I'm only using that as an example. At different meetings, there were different people that raised questions. I've watched most of it on television, like at the Board of Selectmen, there were people that stood up.
Yeah, I think we would. I think the goal would be actually to kind of maybe not necessarily expand the committee per se, but at least say, hey, we want citizens to be engaged along the process, and we'll send it out to the ones that I know of. Well, certainly there's two of them sitting in the room.
We'd like to see more, so the publicity of it, I think, would be important. I did go to meetings, or we watched. I know.
Microphone.
Am I allowed to talk? Is this okay?
Please, go ahead.
It would be great to be able to publicize it a little more, because I think Facebook can be great. And
Please, I'm sorry.
Martha
Identify
Henry.
yourself. For
Martha
people who-
Henry, 30
yeah.
Boardman.
Yeah.
More publicity and how people can be involved without being on the, I think you can only have a committee that's so big, or you end up, never getting anything done. But figuring out a way to have those meetings where there's a good facilitator, because the meeting in September, it was very difficult for people to ask questions and get that facilitated in a way from an independent person that isn't you or Josh, but somebody who sort of, their job is to say, you're next, and they follow that, because it's difficult to participate when you don't feel like there's a real dialogue happening, that there's just sort of bits and pieces. So it would be great if there was some kind of meeting facilitator that isn't maybe invested in the same way, So it's hard, I think, when you're on the inside to understand an outsider's point of view of what they know and what they don't know. And I think a lot of citizens want to participate, but don't even understand, you know, some of the lingo with zoning, or, you know, Rich, you've said a lot of times there's a lot of moving parts that
Yep.
it's very hard to draft, oh, this is what this could look like. And so I think figuring out how you get people to appreciate those parts without saying, don't worry about it, it's in there, because that makes people feel like there is another agenda, which I don't think there is. I think that committee worked very hard to try to bring something forth. I think, you know, the master plan started in 92. 92, I mean, it's a whole different world. The way people live, the economy, everything, how people shop and all of that. So,
Yeah, I
you know,
think
figuring out how it ties back in, and maybe we can publicize it better. Because I don't think, you know, Mr. Byron, you said 200 people come to town meeting, and there's 7,000 voters in this town. So
Right.
I don't know how we do that.
And we had 500 responses to the survey.
Right.
Which is awful good.
Yes.
Really.
Yeah, I know, it's pretty good, Rich.
record-wise.
Thank you for your comments.
Yeah, and I think to Mrs. Henry's point, the you know, the last end of the meetings were really more, they weren't structured like what you're asking about, because it was the hearing, and then there was the Board of Selectmen's meeting and the advisory board. So, you know, like I said, having the language drafted is kind of that basis now to go essentially through the committee process to kind of touch on those pieces, I think would be helpful to do that.
I can't stay quiet any longer.
Go ahead.
I mean, I think there's clearly an awareness and an education process that is, we wish, all the people that were involved, we wish were more evident earlier in the process than late in the process. But yes, the interest in the changes escalated towards the end. You know, I still believe that we need to figure out how to get a majority of people to comment on this and not just the minority. I think that's something we need to figure out how to do as a board and a committee. And, you know, I guess we now got another couple of months to do that. But I do think it would be beneficial for us to plan, probably as the B1 committee, what the process is to get to the next town meeting. A series of meetings, publish all of the meetings, whatever that series of meetings is, make that agenda known, and invite, you know, the public, as we always do. But we need to get out in front of it a little bit more than we did last time. But I want to back up a little bit, too. So Rich was talking about the select board and the advisory board meeting. I mean, the select board, the select board voted through the recommendations the design board made.
It was not easy to get them to do that.
So it was a 2-to-1 vote, and they changed the bundling of it, but they passed all the items through, right? It got to the advisory board, and there was a much different conversation. Well, we shouldn't say it was much different. It was much the same conversations that we've had for the last year, we just had again, and there was some nervousness. Even then, a number of the amendments were still voted forward, and then a number of the amendments were or recommended for indefinite postponement. So I'm not quite sure what the administrative process is here tonight, but do we actually have to vote to take it off the warrant now? And since we recommended for it to be approved, I mean, it's on the warrant. So what happens now administratively?
It will be dealt with at town floor, on the town floor.
Correct.
How?
Yeah, how?
It would have to be a motion.
There'll be a motion made by the advisory board to indefinitely postpone all the articles, not just the 3, the 4, whatever that they, I believe that's the vehicle that they will use to do that.
Tonight would really be kind of polling the board to at least have consensus to agree to postpone it, to then go to town meeting to ask the moderator to IP the whole.
So do we ask the moderator to do that?
What difference does our opinion make?
at this point, I don't know.
Well, I think it matters quite a bit, actually, because they're on there right now.
Yes.
They're on there as planning board articles. Two of them, three of them that were recommended by the advisory board. I think, at least at the planning board, at least set the tone, at least for tonight, going into the 19th, and then we would post we would post town meeting again for the board as a body to be able to speak. Meeting with the moderator to indefinitely postpone it. It's not, I don't have we tried actually to have a meeting last Tuesday night.
Right.
And we weren't able to gather a quorum, so that way we could have had the discussion on the following day, which was November 6th, at the moderator's meeting, to know ahead of time, but we're not in that position right now, unfortunately.
Had it remained bundled, would it all been postponed indefinitely? The Board of Selectmen broke it up, so
The Board of Selectmen, they just sent it on, they didn't opine about the articles, though,
Okay.
officially. I think the sense I got was to IP it right now.
Okay.
If I was a gauge of where they were that night.
Well, I was there that night too, and I don't think that they were ready to IP it that evening.
Well, they didn't. They didn't vote.
They didn't, no,
to
no.
postpone it.
They, I believe that that any feeling on their part probably, in that direction, probably occurred after the advisory board got a hold of it and went through it.
So what happens at town meeting?
you, sir, in the back.
We're the sponsor of the article. John Weddleton, 7 Trailside. We're the sponsor of the articles. So when the advisory board goes up, if their recommendation is to IP it, then they ask us if we concur. If they don't have a recommendation to IP it because they didn't decide formally to do that, then they would ask us, and then we would bring in a motion to IP it. I think on like 4 of the articles, they did not have an IP motion, they approved them. So if that was the case, and you folks vote against it, when you're called up, you would make that motion to IP it and tell why. But we are the sponsors of the articles, so we're the ones that control it.
Since it's unbundled, we need to rethink, do we want to IP everything and postpone all this, or?
Well, we're talking about the B1 articles, not, there's a couple of other ones that are in the,
right.
yeah, okay, just so it's clear.
Yep,
Yeah.
no, good clarification.
Well, but then they're separate. They're all separate issues.
Yes, they are, yeah.
So, I got a few more questions and things I want to get out, and then I think we should figure out what this administrative process is, but, as we've talked, growth in this town is projected, upwards of 10 to 20% over the next 20 years. I don't, the traffic, the infrastructure impacts are coming, whether we change the zoning or not. So, I don't necessarily agree with the comments on traffic in schools, and, it's good to know from a planning standpoint. I don't know that these proposed zoning changes impact that inevitability at all. So we need to figure that out, whether they do or not, or in some cases, you could argue they actually make it less. But, I think as a group and as a B1 committee, we need to do a better job making that statement known. I also think that people don't understand the speed with which it's happening. There are 4 parcels in the B1 district that can support a development project over 15,000 square feet. 2 of those projects right now are being developed as 40B projects. So that leaves 2 sites in the B1 district capable of development. what's stopping them both from being developed as 40B projects, right? One of the 40B projects in front of us does not meet the zoning recommendations that we've put out. It's taller, it's bigger, it's 28,000 square feet, it's an extra story, and it has a higher density in the number of units. So, you know, I don't think these are concepts and inevitabilities that people in the town understand. So, you know, I don't know that time is our friend in this scenario. I also think that, you know, this is a planning process. It's not a design process. It's not a development process. We're not talking about exactitudes and ones and tens. We're talking about periods of time and decades, and we're talking about hundreds and thousands, not ones and twos. So, you know, that's another, the whole concept of the planning process, I think we need to do a better job explaining. And I've been talking to Rich about the MEPC involvement, whether we can extend the funding or how we keep MAPC involvement to the next meeting. I think we need to get the report finalized based on the recommendations that we put forward, and I think we need to get the design lines out, and I think those two documents need to be public, because those documents have a lot of the answers that the people in town are looking for in terms of the discussion we've been having over the course of the last year. So those are some of my general comments on some of the things that Rich mentioned. And I just think we probably as the B1 committee need the most important thing at this point is to plan that path to the next town meeting, to make sure that the selectmen, the advisory board, and the public are all knowledgeable of our plan and have the opportunity to be involved in that plan. So, that all being said, you know, I think there's enough reservation from a number of parties in town that we need to figure out how to reconsider the recommendation that we've made and what we're going to do on the floor at town meeting with these motions. So maybe that's what we should talk about now.
Gary, any thoughts? Chad?
I think Aaron's comments are well received, and I have the same concern as how do we handle town meeting, and then how do we prepare for the next meeting so that we're not here again at the same situation.
Yeah, to the latter point, there was a great deal of discussion over the months about how to prepare for town meeting and how to get the public involved and how to get the information out there so that it would be favorably received at town meeting. And there wasn't a lot of discussion about making sure the rest of the boards were up to speed, you know, and that unfortunately, particularly with the withdrawal of the advisory board representative, ended up being a stumbling block that we didn't anticipate. It wasn't anticipated. Anyway, back to the former point. As was pointed out a moment ago, we are the sponsors of these, and Rich's recommendation is that we withdraw them. If you look at the warrant, as a copy of which I have received with the advisory board recommendations in it, and maybe you have as well, the first 6 articles deal with B1 zoning, and each and every one of them is recommended to be indefinitely postponed. And so they will stand up and say that one at a time, and I think we need to say that we've reached the same conclusion, that we should take into consideration all the critique and questions that have been raised and continue to work on this and bring it back in the spring.
I don't necessarily, you know, as we go through it, I don't know if there's necessarily major changes necessarily in the zoning per se that's being presented. There's some things, there's some points that need some refinements to it. I think a lot of it's the education. It's getting the word out about how this works, the process, and the possible outcomes for people to be able to digest a little bit. Because, again, to Aaron's point, really quantify a little bit better on the order of magnitude associated with this. I mean, one of the questions that came back to me is when we had to build out the spreadsheet, the Excel spreadsheet together, and we put in just potential how many units by 40B were there. That they thought that's how many 40B units we're gonna get. And it was just a matter of, it was an exercise mathematically to show what could happen. So it's actually putting the information out there too in a way that doesn't get
misinterpreted.
Too. I think that's what I really found to be. It's a struggle between the what if, and the what if is a broad question and something always could happen, and you have to be, people looked at me like I was slow in responding, like I was hiding something back. And as I said at the selectmen's meeting, what comes out of your mouth, people will hold you to it. So you have to really, it's not an easy thing to do, to be able to articulate and not say, well, that's not going to happen, because somebody circles back and something happens, they're going to hold you to that. I mean, that's, so having it, present the information in a way that people understand is important, and then answer some of these questions, I think, is part of going forward. There's there's not probably a lot necessarily in here to take a look at per se, but
The problems of understanding stem far beyond the recommendations that we're making in the zoning. People don't understand 40B. They don't understand the concepts of planning. They don't understand the growth that's coming to this town, whether they want it or not, right? I mean, we are an hour from Boston, we're an hour from Providence, we're an hour from Worcester, right? The population of the greater Boston region is set to pass 5 million people in the next 10 years, right? We have a public transportation station. The MBTA just approved a $20 billion 5-year investment program in the public transportation system, right? This growth is coming. And if we don't plan for it, the developers will plan for it for us. And if the 40B developments don't happen in the B1 district, they're going to happen in the farms in the town that we're all trying to protect. So.
Yep. Well, the 40B, I mean, as far as 40B is concerned, we have existing zoning, we may have new zoning. Until the town reaches its 10% goal, 40B can happen, and
Right, but the point is that our existing zoning is so restrictive that it has not supported development over in 20-plus years. So it is now becoming economically feasible for all of that property to be developed by 40B developers. Right? So the fact that our zoning is so restrictive is inviting 40B development. And that will continue to be problematic for this town.
Well, even with less restrictive zoning, all the property here is privately owned, and you cannot force someone who owns a piece of property to develop it under any set of circumstances. And we've been living that scenario for, I don't know, 20, 30 years, whatever it is. An awful long time. At any rate, yes, ma'am.
Martha Henry, 30 Boardman Street. Can I just make a suggestion? I think you might be right that people don't understand all those things. I think that is something that you should take responsibility for, and doing it in a executive summary, nice presentation so people can understand that and appreciate it. And I think you have to speak to the tax. Where is the tax sort of benefit? So you talk about this growth is coming, this growth is coming. I think we all can appreciate that. But you're also going to, the proposal, it needs some more work. It's not just people aren't smart enough to figure it out. We need to package it nicer. I think that's a little bit insulting to people. So I think you should think about how you present that we're not smart enough to know what we're looking at. And you had a whole bunch of people on your advisory committee who felt the same way. And I would imagine they're appointed because they have something to offer. So I'm a little offended by people aren't smart enough to know it's coming. But the proposal that was put forth is bringing lots of residential that is going to tax those services, and the commercial will not offset that cost. So convince us, give us the rationale, which is what I heard Mr. Hurwitz ask for on the advisory committee. Help me understand why you lifted the cap. What is the answer? And the answer cannot be, well, anything could happen. I can't give you those scenarios. I personally feel like you give the scenarios of, if you build it, they will come. But let's not talk about all the other possibilities that could happen, people combining lots, other things that could happen. And I think those are fair questions that if you believe in those proposals, you should be able to answer as a B1 committee. And to date, those have not been adequately answered. And if they had, we wouldn't be sitting here having this discussion. And I think it's about getting folks engaged and not talking down to them and making them feel like because they're not architects or planning board members that they're too stupid to figure out what planning is or zoning is.
Yeah, I feel the need to respond to that. I apologize for talking down. That was not my intent. It's simply a frustration with a process that I've been involved with for a long period of time. It goes a long time before the B1 committee. I spent 3 years working on the Southwood committee as well. So,
you should be able to answer some of the questions.
well, look, we have a lot of the answers that you're looking for, right? They're just not public, which is also part of my frustration, right? So I'm not. And part of what I said is we have these documents that we need to get out and to answer the questions. We need to do that. It's part of an education process. I totally agree with you. That process didn't happen, and the public became much more interested in this process in the last month than they were in the previous 11 months. And I don't know that we were prepared for that process. So, but I need to finish. My intent. I'm not saying that the townspeople are too dumb to understand this, and I don't think I ever said that. It may have been implicit in some of my language, but that's not what I said. What I said was these are concepts that people don't understand. I didn't say they weren't capable of understanding it. And it's our job as a committee, a board, and a town to try and explain these concepts to the public. And as it is clear, it's not being done. So that needs to be done.
Yeah, okay. Go ahead.
Chris Henry, 30 Board, but to your point of that, a lot of the sort of Johnny-come-lately statement that you have repeatedly said, I think many other people were sort of on board watching this process as it took place from the very beginning. I watched the meetings. I attended the ones that I could. In all honesty, I was waiting for the report. My understanding of this whole thing and bringing in the meta guy was that he was going to produce a report which was going to sort of outline all of the things that you guys had been bringing forth up to that point. It was only at the last meeting in October when he said, oh yeah, I'll give you the report after town meeting, which I found incredibly frustrating. And yeah, that's when people came out. If you want to have a productive town meeting, you've got to have that stuff out ahead of time. You can't say, oh, trust me, it's there. We'll show you at the end. That's generally not how these are done. That's not what I was expecting. So I was sort of, as I think many people were sort of holding back and waiting to see what you guys were going to come forward with. So I think that's why you got that late push at the end.
Thank you. All right. Sir, you said?
I think I've said my piece.
Okay. Gary?
No, it doesn't sound like what we had drafted would have survived and gone anywhere anyway. It didn't make it all the way through. It won't survive the town meeting, so you have no choice, it sounds like, but to postpone. Am I correct in that assumption?
I kind of think that's where it's at, but Chad, we haven't heard from you. Where are you?
I agree with Gary.
Okay.
It's just a matter of administration. I don't know that that's a correct assumption. I mean, the warrants are there. If we don't remove them, they can be voted on at town meeting. Yeah, the
Yes,
ones
they
that
can.
aren't, the ones
Yes,
that weren't
they can.
recommended to be.
So the question on the table is, should we recommend they be removed?
Right.
Yes, right. And so we need a motion to that effect, and then we'll see where we are. So,
What's the harm in having them voted on if they're at the town meeting? I don't understand the
well,
negative side of it.
for starters, the conversation that we just had will go on for hours
In
at
the
the
town
town
meeting.
meeting.
Right.
To really little effect, because I think they'll all get voted down
Right.
based on all the
Okay.
questions that still are on the table.
That's what I was asking.
Yeah,
Yes.
so I think,
Certainly if we don't get the questions answered. But I also think, we've talked through this process that, and we certainly recommended it in this way, that the bundled approach is the right way to go with this process. And I don't think personally that breaking them up into individual items is a good plan for the town.
well, that's a discussion for the next round, not.
Right, but it
they're already
becomes,
unbundled.
a reason to remove all of them from the warrant this time.
Oh, okay, all right, I understand. Yeah.
Definitely agree with that.
Yeah, all
I
right.
mentioned that at the last meeting as well.
All right, so we need a motion to recommend that these first 6 articles be withdrawn,
Or indefinitely postponed.
or definitely postponed, yes, all right.
So moved.
Do we have a second? We have a second, all right. Is there any further discussion before we vote? Rich, anything you want to say?
I think
It's been said.
enough has been said.
Okay. All right, so then, all those who wish to make a recommendation for indefinite postponement of the first 6 articles, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, that's our recommendation. Now, the next article, interestingly enough,
I gotta recuse myself. I live on Rice Farm Road.
No, we're not done.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, he's talking about F11
Oh, we got the
now.
rest of the article.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
So at the moderators meeting last Wednesday, and I think also the night before at the Board of Selectmen meeting, there was discussion about a friendly amendment to the site plan approval bylaw to change from building commissioner and town planner to the planning board in all phases of the site plan approval bylaw process, the 3-tiered approach. Right now, if you remember, there was initial determination whether site plan approval is required. That'd be done at the staff level between the building commissioner and the town planner. There will be, as mentioned at the moderators meeting, a friendly amendment to change that to the planning board in its entirety. Letting you know about it now, so you can discuss it a little bit, because you probably were not necessarily aware of that until now, unless you were following along.
That was okayed by the town council?
So town council had viewed changing building commissioner / town planner and swapping it out with planning board within scope if that motion happened at town meeting floor.
But what does that mean? Does that mean that everybody comes to the planning board? Does it mean that you
So
take?
now,
Right. There's no definitive
if
on,
you-
how do you work that?
if you just talk it through, at least at the moment, the bylaw wasn't just drafted that way, so now swapping it out, I mean, so that means everybody would come to the planning board. And the way the bylaw, if you remember, it's really been tightened up significantly. So the way the present bylaw is written, any change of tendency, they would have to come to the planning board for determination. The other piece of it right now is the way that is written, one of the requirements is walking the property. So that's, if it swaps out from commissioner, town planner, that's a planning board function.
Yep.
Do you walk the property?
I don't, so here's a debatable question. To me, if it is the planning board, then it's the board. That's a board. It's not a staff. It's not one person. If you, I understand there's going to be a drafting of a proposed amendment to it to take a look at it. So I think regardless, the planning board needs to be posted for town meeting because it's going to come up. And so I'm sure you're gonna need to be able to weigh in on it as it comes before town meeting floor.
Which means that everybody needs to be there, or try to be there, if you can.
So is it gonna be
But-
waived to the planning board or to the town planner? Is
I
that
haven't
the
seen any
contact
language,
person?
so I,
At the selectmen's meeting, it was stated that it would be amended to mean the planning board.
Which
Not
means that
that-
every single application would come to us.
That's what it means, that's exactly right.
That
Every,
doesn't make any sense.
No,
So
it doesn't.
that same discussion was, as I'm recalling, I watched you guys on television, but it was, and I thought you had supported the fact that other towns do this the same way? Everything goes before the planning board in other towns? Is that what I heard in that conversation?
so part of that discussion was, if you remember way back, I had originally was recommended it would all go to the planning board, but through the process, the board decided that you wanted to have really, essentially, similar to what's in place now, there's a staff level review, and then a planning board level review. So the draft that went to, submitted to town meeting from the planning board has both components. Had it been thought about from the beginning as the planning board, I'm pretty confident we would have drafted things differently, the way they were, to clarify different points that could come up.
Yeah.
That's not there right now, so this is the, potential pitfall that could happen.
It's replacing planning board for building commissioner and town planner, so building commissioner and town planner are not involved in these steps of the process.
Yeah.
they would be out of it, if
Yeah.
that amendment is accepted, yes.
What was the reasoning for making that swap in the meeting?
That the,
A lot of people think that the building commissioner is really, shouldn't be the judge and jury, shouldn't be deciding and then be the enforcement officer, although in most towns, that's how it's done.
And in fact, who was it? Someone at the selectmen's meeting pointed out that, it wasn't at the selectmen's meeting, it was at the moderators' meeting, which I attended. The moderator pointed out, since he advises many towns, that many towns are moving from the planning board to
Staff level.
staff level.
Right.
So,
and really, in some respects, it's really an order of magnitude, I would argue to you, that, the amount of commercially zoned property and the commercial properties in the town of Norfolk is much smaller than a lot of other communities.
although
So,
growing.
well,
Modest.
growing, but just,
Modestly, yeah.
the moderator's comment was, if you take an order of magnitude, the amount of commercial activity in other communities, they have looked at changing how it gets administered.
How many F-11s does Bob get every month?
I don't
One.
know?
know.
One?
Maybe one.
One.
Don't forget, we can't quantify this, because this is so what he gets today is not what would happen under this new bylaw, because now swapping out tenancy would be an F-11.
Right.
So,
That's a nightmare.
so you can't really look to what's on the books now, because we've ratcheted up under this proposed
Yeah,
bylaw.
yeah.
So you have a vacant tenant space,
Yeah, yeah.
you want to fill it out, you got to go.
We ratcheted it up thinking that it would be an administrative process between.
Correct, I understand.
With two professionals who were in the business and who could walk the property with the owner and review the tenancy change or the change of use and make a judgment as to whether a site plan review was not needed, a site plan modification was needed, or a full site plan was needed, the latter two coming to the board, and the former not.
And the other difference from right now, what's in effect, is that you have to have a site plan. So that whole non-applicability, you don't have a site plan, that would be gone under
Right,
this
if you
new
don't have a
version.
site plan,
You're
even
right.
if it's just a tenancy change, you still gotta come to the board to
Yeah.
create a site plan. Right. So how many site plans don't we have in terms of commercial properties? It was estimated to be 10 to 20%.
Yeah.
So the question is, do we pull this, do we leave it and then modify it?
I think
For
we
the
fight
next
for
meeting?
it, I think we fight for it the way it is on town floor. That's what I'm prepared to do.
Okay.
I agree with that, Walter, because Richard's right. This was drafted with the understanding of the different tiers, and by changing that one element,
we would have probably drafted it differently.
Yeah, we probably
It
would.
was not the intent.
But we discussed that and decided that that was not our recommendation. We did not want to go there.
We did discuss that at the last meeting, yes.
Right.
If, just for the record, I need to reiterate this again. I support the idea of it all going to the planning board, but I also work for you and support what you wanted to do. So I don't want to have it twisted, okay, in the conversation as if, you know, I'm flip-flopping just because I just want to articulate that the original recommendation was all the planning board. I've worked with the board to draft this version. I still think it could work on the planning board, but not under this version.
Yes, I understand.
Okay?
Yep, totally
Thank you.
understand.
But the planning board does not want to do that.
I understood.
Planning
I
board
just
wants
want
to do
It's
what's
not,
written.
it's not only a matter of want, we just don't think it's the right thing to do.
There has to
we
be a
don't think
point
it's
made to take care of all the ones that are just administrative and move along.
Exactly.
Exactly. And in this case, we think it should be 2-point men.
Right, it's not because
Persons.
it's not because we don't want to do it, it's because we think that the public shouldn't be burdened by the need to come to the planning board
Right.
to have a tenancy approved.
My comment would have been that there were, let's say there were a half a dozen problems with approvals in the past. And if the new proposal addressed all 6 of those, I don't see why it's not being accepted elsewhere. I'm remembering I forget the location, is it Hill Street, where the,
6 Hill Street.
you know, where site plan approval was put in place based on what the owner of the property checked off on their boxes. And as it turned out, that was incorrect. So mistakes were made, and we were trying to take subjectivity out of the process so that it wasn't single-minded. And the only issue I would see is if we put all the failures in front of the new process, and if the new process solved it and didn't pass the burden back to the planning board, I don't see why we wouldn't go forward with what we've just proposed.
So where are we?
Yes, so where are we? I guess we're going to fight for it at
We're
the
out of
meeting.
someplace, you're gonna tell us.
Well, I think Walter hit, so, as far as I understand, there'll be a motion. So, you'll have to articulate why you think.
Again, does this get us back into an education problem where, you know, someone's gonna make a motion to approve something which changes the way we've drafted it, which executes it in a way we never intended, right?
If that motion is accepted. But I'm prepared to stand up and oppose the motion and defend our original article on town floor. And if I falter or stumble, you guys can stand up and back me up.
Or we could remove it.
We could.
Educate the folks that made the
I don't think that's
recommendation.
acceptable. I don't think that's acceptable. I think we know that there's half a dozen issues that have occurred over the last couple of years, and we have come up with a fix, we ought to stick with it.
And if our recommended fix doesn't work, the fix that's been proposed is better than the current situation?
This fix?
No, the fix with
Oh,
the coming to the planning board, we
that's
think would be
overpowering.
better than the existing situation?
I don't think so.
No,
I think that's the opposing view, yes, well, not to speak for the board, but yes.
Most folks that were against the old format said that they were in favor of this passing and then modifying it. This is a step better, but it's not what a lot of folks wanted in full. But either way, I think Mrs. Simpson was one of the advocates that got stuck in something like this, and they all said at least past this, it's one step better. It brings in 2 folks to determine it rather than one, and they still feel that they want it modified more. Probably in the end to appoint person of the planning board and then whatever needs to come to the board.
The one thing that was discussed at the advisory board is just to write a synopsis a little bit. What was, to your point earlier, on this one, that, you know, have applicability. For example, if you have a 1 or 2 family home, this is not applicable to you, so the audience would be a little bit different for this particular article, and just kind of lay it out a little bit more than what's on the warrant, so I'll have that as a handout, and we can review it.
We'll collaborate on that.
We'll talk about that for town meeting. Because I think there's a lot of, this one here, unless you were kind of around site plan related matters, might not be as aware of. Because again, it's not applicable to 1 or 2 family homes, so the site plan process, people have experience with it, but not necessarily everybody goes to town meeting on the 19th.
So is the board comfortable with that? I'll get up and recommend that we not vote in favor of the amendment that we anticipate is coming, but in fact recommend voting for the article as written.
Correct.
Okay. I don't think there's any discussion needed on the other 3 articles that are sponsored by us that are on the warrant. They recommend approval by the advisory board, and
Right, I don't,
will
I
come.
don't think so.
Yes, the audience, go ahead, pick.
Donna Jones. Article 7 got printed in the warrant as here. Planning board recommends this. The advisory board recommends approval. Who would be presenting the amendment?
We anticipate that one of the selectmen will. Select board will.
And then
That's
the planning board could speak that we do not recommend the
That's correct.
amendment.
That is correct.
Okay. And I do remember you saying this is a good step forward. Next meeting, you'd probably get the planning board involved, so.
Oh, I didn't say that. I said.
Board discussed.
Because I think this is the ultimate.
Way to go.
Way to go. That's just my personal opinion. Yes, sir.
Chris Henry, 30 Boardman. So my question, I thought this was a good process of trying to not bring every article before the planning board. That seemed excessive. I thought the idea of pulling it out and doing the 2 people was a great idea. I didn't like the idea that the planning board was left completely out of that process. Is there a reason that it couldn't be, as John said, a point person from, so in other words, a 3-party setup of 1 representative from the, along with the board of the building commissioner, along with the town planner, and that way that would be 3 people voting as opposed to just 2, and 2 people that work within the same office of each other.
They don't. They're in a different office, but that's all right. The requirement is that every decision is to be put in writing, and even if it's one that says you don't have to have a modification of the site plan and brought to the planning board. So everyone that, if this goes through, everyone that Bob and Rich pass on will be written up, and a copy will come to us, so we will know what's going on. They're here every day, in the office. Planning board are out, they're working, they're doing other things, they're not available. These guys can respond quickly, get out there, walk the property with the fellow, make the decision, and let us know what's going on. So,
But they're not,
1 a month, right?
they're not making
it's
one.
coming more, I believe it'll probably double or triple that, so.
I think there's, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that 100% of the decisions are not made by those 2 people. Whenever site plan modification occurs, all of that goes to the planning board. Is that correct?
Yes.
So the first, if it's, you have a site plan, and then review the criteria in the site plan not required. If it falls within there, then it doesn't have to go to the planning board.
Yes.
And then, second tier is that it requires a modification. It goes to the planning board for modification, and you could deem it that it requires more or less, I suppose. I don't know about less. I didn't really think about it in those terms, but certainly you could ratchet up because the board has the power to overrule that determination. And a full site plan is full site plan.
So, yeah, the comment I was making.
We did have an earlier version. I had proposed a planning board chairman,
Or representative.
town planner and a building commissioner on there. But that was modified, stricken to.
So 2 points of clarification I wanted to make to Chris's question. One was, it's only quote unquote the easy ones that don't come to the planning board. There's 3 levels, 2 of those still come here.
Right.
And then we did review the option to have a planning board representative, and we thought it wasn't needed for the easy ones, and the 2/3 that aren't easy, they're gonna come to the board anyway. So that's why that idea was abandoned.
Personally, I just liked that, the idea that it was 3 versus 2. Like, if there's a conflict, who's the tiebreaker?
We will be the tiebreaker.
Yeah, okay. That was all my, and it seemed as if you guys sort of represented the citizens, he represented zoning, and Rich represented planning. That was sort of the 3 people that, or 3 groups that needed to be represented. That was my only point.
It's my understanding that that level 1, that is the town planner and the building commissioner, if they disagree, it then gets bumped to the planning board.
Yeah.
They will have no choice.
Right.
Yeah.
By the way, we welcome your inputs, and we're always looking for new volunteers, you know, so.
His dad did it his whole life, so he's gonna wait till his kids grow up.
All right. Rich, I think that is all we need to discuss about the zoning articles
Yes.
tonight, unless you have anything else.
No, I do not.
Okay. Anything else before we move on, gentlemen? Okay. Okay, request for Wrights Farm Road bond reduction, request for 3 bonds totaling 172 to 121,764. We have a document with us here prepared by Mr. McGee.
Basically, Mr. Chairman, we have 3 separate bonds existing now for Wright Farm Road, and what we're doing is consolidating the 3 bonds into 1 bond to make it more simple to track. Along with that, some of the cost to complete items that totaled around $50,000 were completed, so this new bond reflects the updated work that was done. So basically, I'm looking for a vote to take each of the 3 existing bonds down to 0, and then a 4th vote to bring the new bond for the whole roadway into place.
The reduction of 3 bonds to 0 as step 1 can be done in 1 motion, I believe, instead of 3 motions.
I believe so.
Yeah. All right, so questions for Mr. Weddleton?
My question with the bonds is usually we get a comment from DPW on these, don't we? I mean, I know we do when we're talking about the content of the bonds. I guess this isn't talking about
Here's
content.
the letter.
Oh,
Right in there.
there we go. We have it. Right. No comment.
Okay. So we need a motion to reduce 3 bonds to 0 and replace them with a new bond.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, when you're making the motion to reduce the 3 bonds, if you could just list the individual amounts of each bond?
Yes, I will do that. So we need a motion to reduce bond number 1 from 49,313 to 0, second bond from 17,086 to 0, and the third bond from 105,820 to 0, those totals being 172,219. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
The motion didn't contemplate creating a new bond.
No, that's a second motion. I've been instructed that's the way I'm supposed to do it, so.
So moved.
You have to second. Second.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, now we need a motion to create a new bond in the amount of $121,764 to complete Wrights Farm Road.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so we have taken care of that, I believe. Fox Run subdivision update on completion. We have anything on that, Rich?
I can give you,
Is it, there is?
well, there is an update. We had a couple months ago now, September 4th, John Engdahl, Director of Land Development. Reed Bluth, VP of Land Acquisition. Bob McGee, Barry La Riviera, DPW Director and Assistant, Mr. Littleton, Mr. Byron, and discussed moving these roads forward for eventual acceptance. The repairs occurred in June of 2018. The discussion was to have in the spring of 2020, video the drainage system to assess to make sure that there wasn't any damage from any settling going on, and then potentially with acceptance in the fall of 2020. At the same time, there'd be revisiting of the surety of the bonds for acceptance. I know they do need to, they have reached out to get the streetlights put in based on the plan, so they need to take care of that. We did clarify for the board, just general information, they will be metered. That has come up more recently. They'll be paid for by Pulte as far as the power to light them, and then once they're accepted, then they become part of the town. There are punch list items that they are aware of they need to take care of, which at this point, I think we're talking more about the spring, because we're past some of the landscaping time. But there was a Verizon box at 159 Hemingway Place that needed to be taken care of. They need to replace some dead trees. There's electrical, temporary electrical service at 180 Warren Street that need to remove. So they do have some punch list items, but generally the discussion was having a framework to ensure that the drainage fixes worked and in good working order before the town accepts it. So it's really probably will hinge more on the video and that happens next spring to take a look and get an assessment of what's going on. Because they did, if you remember, use some techniques to repair the drainage that wasn't
Different techniques in different areas.
techniques that hadn't been applied here locally.
Yeah,
Which essentially,
What's the status of the bond that we're gonna put in place that was gonna cover this thing for 2 or 3 years more after?
so that's what we're going to have to revisit in the spring.
Did they even look into it?
No, not as of yet. So the bond's still as is.
Because when he left our meeting, he said he was gonna look into that.
Yeah,
He didn't.
He has not, no.
Feel the same way.
Well, I mean,
And all of that's assuming that there's zero change in deterioration on the fixes.
right.
Correct, yes.
Okay. Okay.
All right, thank you,
Me-
Rich.
Oh, I'm sorry, one last item with it. They did reach out to DPW to have them plow and then pay DPW to plow the streets.
Oh.
They were getting pricing, so,
That's happening this year? It'll be DPW?
as far as I know, yeah.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, so, that's it for that.
Okay, thank you. Okay, you're next on this item of revised fee schedule.
Yeah, so it's just mining to our advertising budget, which is going over. So we've had to figure out a strategy to try to deal with advertising costs because we can't predict how many applications come in. So we're basically essentially going to simplify matters, which was, I've looked at some other not bylaws, but fee schedules from other towns, and they just have advertisement fee at the expense of the applicant, which would be mimicking what the Conservation Commission does now. Money goes in the revolving account, which we do have established, and then we pay the Sun Chronicle directly.
Yep.
Right now, we collect it under a fee, and then it goes into the treasury, and then the money doesn't come out to us. So we're paying for ads, and we're not getting reimbursed the way the present structure is. So what we want, originally I had proposed, which the board could do, if you wanted to reduce your fee to offset the cost, and then just say at the applicant's expense. That's one option, which essentially they run about $200, I think. $250. So if you wanted to just reduce the filing fee to the town and then add in, which we have highlighted in red here, advertisement fee at the expense of the applicant, you could do that. Or you could keep the filing fee the same and just add on the advertisement cost.
Question, all the figures in black are unchanged?
Unchanged, right. Yep.
Okay, it's only the
Yep.
red that's proposed differently
Correct.
at the moment, okay.
So we would just be changing to charge for the advertisement fee.
Which do you prefer? Which option do you prefer,
Probably at this point, just add in the advertisement fee.
as you've typed it here?
Yeah.
Okay,
These fees aren't
works.
exorbitant, they're
Yeah.
within the range of other municipalities.
And everything in black exists. I mean, these
Correct,
are the
yep.
existing, this is the existing fee structure that we have.
Correct.
Yeah, okay.
So if the board is agreeable to this change, we would advertise it for December so we could have the board vote it and implement it
Yeah.
after that.
Yep.
We said a budget was what? Yeah, so we've already gone through 4,000
Yeah.
in the advertising budget.
Yeah.
So we've had a transfer, we have to move money out of other expenses to cover it.
Right.
So, how would this affect the advertising budget?
We would have money, it would, well, we wouldn't be going into the, we've already gone through the advertising budget.
Right.
So now we're rolling into supplies.
No, but I'm just fast forwarding. So
So then we roll forward to next year.
Yeah.
We could lower advertisement costs. So our advertisement cost is really printing the bylaws. And then when we have zoning changes,
So more predictable.
more predictable,
More
yes.
predictable costs, whereas
Correct.
these would then to be passed through.
Right. So now,
And also if the Sun Chronicle or wherever we post it, wherever we advertise, if they change their rates,
exactly.
you pass that change on.
We just pass it through, right.
Right. Okay.
All right, any other questions from the board? Essentially, John, all the numbers in black are existing fee, and he's only proposing to add what's in red there. And he offered two options while you were out. One is to do it the way he's got it written, or to put a $250 fee number here and reduce this number by $250. He could do it either way. He recommends this way, so that's what's on the table. Okay. All right, so we need a motion to accept this change and to do what?
So it'll be advertised.
Advertise it as a public hearing?
Correct.
For
As a-
next month?
For next month as a regulation change.
All right. Do we have a motion to that effect?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All right, any further discussion before we vote? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Meeting minutes. Meeting minutes. We have 3 sets to approve. So who's, I guess that's
me.
Gary. Who's going to recommend approval of minutes?
It's a motion that I make?
Yes.
I make, I move to accept the meeting minutes for September 10th, 2019, September 23rd, 2019, and October 8th, 2019.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Town planner updates. That's you again, sir.
I think I've updated enough for the course of the meeting.
Okay. We have meeting scheduled for into next year. There's one item that's not on the agenda that I just want to, Rich and I agreed to put it on there. It'll be on the December meeting. It's the long postponed discussion about sidewalks. What should we do about sidewalk fees or not? You know, we got into that maybe 6 months ago in a North Street development. And So just that, we'll bring Bob McGee in here, we'll talk about it collectively among us and decide what our proposal should be going forward. We'll catch him before he retires. Anything,
When is his retirement?
Yeah.
end of the year.
Okay.
End of the year.
There's a hiring process going on now for his replacement.
Okay. Wasn't sure of the exact date.
I don't know if we have the exact date.
Okay. Loose date.
I mean,
It's
when he
December.
Yeah, when he leaves, I don't know, but I think it's effective the end of
Effective
December.
the end of the year, okay.
Yeah.
Any other items we should address tonight? Rich, anything
So,
else?
Nope, we'll post it for town meeting.
Yep.
Yeah. Oh, already done.
Vince, anything else okay. Then we should entertain a meeting to move.
Motion to close.
To adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. We are adjourned.